was thinking I might do another live video. It's a little intimidating for me to do this, as I often struggle with mental health issues, and at some future time I actually want to address some of the mental health issues that people struggle with, more particularly in the arts, and some things you can do to help with that. Today I wanted to talk about a particular thing, mental aspect of practicing. So much of what we do when we're performing, when we're playing, and when we're practicing is a lot of mental work. There's a physical component to some of what we do, but for the most part, I would say a lot of our practice long term ends up being very mental. That it's how we think about the problems that we're going. And so for this, I wanted to play a little bit of a piece. I've worked on it for a long time, so it's a bit of an unfair comparison, since I already have it kind of worked into my muscle memory. But it's a famous piece. And then I actually flip to a random page in the Bach cello suites, which I'm going to play on viola. And yeah, just talk about the different ways that I would approach practicing the section, kind of what's going on through my mind, and how I might practice a section to get it more effective. So here is a little bit of the cello suite. Excuse me, I've got my practice mute on. Now I'm just going through a little bit of this, and I've worked this enough again that some of what I'm seeing when I do this is this first opening that I've got the mental picture of the way my hand sets up with this. And to get that note in tune, I also know that my B is going to be slightly flatter than it would normally be. See, there's that B, which is slightly sharp against the D string, but the first thing then, knowing kind of where my fingers are set up for this first part, and then knowing where my fingers are going to go. Now, the practice I did initially with this was a lot of then trying to figure out how do I transition from one set of fingers to another set of fingers. And the more particular thing that I wanted to talk about today is a trick that I've been using with some of my more advanced private students. And the idea behind this is that we're trying to make an emotional connection. We're trying to mentally work the passage that we're trying to play through. And we are also, at the same time, trying to create, I might have already said this, trying to create a mental map of it. So yeah, we've got the emotional side of it. When you make an emotional connection with the music, it sticks more in your memory. And when, or really anything that you're trying to learn, if you make an emotional connection, what you'll find is that all of a sudden you remember it better. And that's great to kind of hack into when you're practicing or doing many things. The other side of this is I want a mental construct for this. So the more mentally I work through it, the better. And I don't want to spend a large amount of time. In fact, sometimes the more time I spend trying to think about how I'm going to practice it rather than just doing something, the less I can actually get on to practicing. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll say, imagine we did word associations for a second. You know, I say peanut butter, somebody might say jelly, or they might say jam, or they might say jar, or something where they associate that. And the idea is sort of the first thing that pops in your head when you do word associations. In a similar way, I'm going to play through this first part, and I'm going to say the first thing that pops in my head is probably going to be really silly. And actually, silly is better because it creates an emotional connection. And the process then of thinking through this gets it into my memory better because I've thought through it more deliberately. So the feeling then of how I change strings, let's talk about that. Just doing that, I'm feeling, and the feeling here, I'm picturing hazelnut spread, more particularly like Nutella. For some reason, it just, the feeling feels like that. And that movement here It's just like maybe almost like a chunky peanut butter feel as I'm moving here. Why does it feel that? It doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter what it feels like, but you've got this mental image of it, and you try and say the first thing that it feels like in your mind, so that then I can feel how is my wrist moving? How am I doing that? And so that's again, this is something I've practiced a lot beforehand, but I figure it's fair to let's flip to a random page. Yay! And I'm on purpose actually flipping to somewhere later in the book because I don't want to. Oh, I guess it's the C major. That's not bad. And this is the Gigue from the third cello suite in C major. Notes here. And I'm playing out of the William Primrose edition. Now I'm just going to focus on that first little bit right there. Emotionally, because I love theory. I'm a theory nerd. I'm super excited when I say, "Oh, it's sol do do," and then it's a little scale. So I can kind of make a quick connection because I'm like, "Oh, he's so excited he's using scales." Otherwise, I might think, "Well, what does this feel like?" Which I haven't eaten lunch yet, so I'm thinking food, and it's really salsa-y. I'm feeling tortilla chips. Why, again, it doesn't matter, honestly, why I feel that. But then I can feel. And partly also, the reason I close my eyes is I'm trying to feel what it feels like in my hand without visual distractions, so that then I hopefully kind of lock it into memory a little bit better. I'm also kind of, because again, I get a kick out of this. I'm analyzing when it's got these shifts. Why did William Primrose do this? By the way, William Primrose has a different set of fingers from mine. So some of the shifts that are listed in here, I don't do them because physically my handset's not really built for that at all. But what I can see then within here is this first shift, and then a shift up, which I've got this, and then just subtle shift. That then I can get this little pattern going on right there, up to that F without having to shift because I've already shifted. And then shift back. And it's got that quick motion also to the harmonic right there. I haven't decided yet. Do I like that? Actually, I'm trying it the other way. I do like that shift because it gives a color change between the two of them. So now, within this, and that's about as far as I got last time. So within just a few minutes, I've actually got this kind of more locked into my memory. And the reason that this works so well is I'm actively picturing what I'm doing. I'm not just playing through notes. As a prerequisite to this, I have worked a lot of scales. I love scales. I think they're extremely beneficial. And part of the reason that we work scales is they are slightly easier than the regular stuff we're doing all the time. So it's a good way to ease into practice. But it's patterns, 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 patterns. It gives me a mental map of what I'm doing so that I can more easily, when I'm going through something like this, my fingers just know, oh, okay, this is the pattern. And then I can go a little bit further in this and say, all of those little things, my fingers just know what they're doing. The other part of this that's a very big mental thing is I really don't want to think note, 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 note. Thinking like that is absolutely miserable. It is so hard to do. And when you're thinking about each individual note, brain-wise, there's so much you have to then process. Now, I recently, I've been telling my students about this, heard about the world record holder for reciting the digits of pi. And they always, when I ask them how high do you think he's gotten with this, they always say something like, oh, maybe 1,000. You know, if they're very conservative, they might say it's more like 500 or something like this, how many digits of pi he's memorized. And when I tell them what it actually is, they're astounded, which is what I was as well, which is 100,000 digits of pi he's learned. Now, the way it talks about, in an article I read about this, is he doesn't memorize each number. You know, it's not about each individual number, it's about a grouping of numbers. And when he memorizes this, he actually assigns the numbers a story he can tell as part of the bigger story, the bigger picture that's an epic tale he has been sort of writing all along. So there's a lot of mental work with it, and he's not picturing, again, he's not trying to recite each individual 100,000 digit. He's trying to go through this with a story. And in a similar way when practice, then, that when I see, I really only thought about like two things as I did that. My entrance, the kind of overall feel of da 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 da. This being a G, I kind of get a jig. I get the feel of that jig that I can really easily remember that. You know, da 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 da. And so I got the feel of the rhythms, and the shape of the notes. And so I'm really only thinking about two things. When I go a little bit further, then I have to think, oh, there's that little shift there. Yadum, bum, bottom. Partly to, again, I've done a lot of arpeggios in addition to just scales. Arpeggios, broken thirds, scales, double stops, a lot of exercises. So the next little bit, when it has that that's just an arpeggio. With that high note there. But I'm just like, oh yeah. That is, and because again, I'm really nerdy about the theory, I can be like, oh, that is a second inversion C major chord. And it's going from the tonic down to the dominant, and then I'm going to the third of the chord, ya, dum, bum, bum. You don't have to do it that way. It's more about, again, picturing the shape of this. And for some reason, again, mentally, when I'm doing this word association type practice, the shape I see of this is a lollipop. I have no idea why. I'm picturing, and it just feels like a lollipop. And again, the part of it sounds weird to say that. And why does it sound? Why does it feel like a lollipop? It really doesn't matter. It's really that internal subconscious realization of what it looks like, feels like, that locks the memory of it a little bit quicker by having that sort of subconscious with it. And if I went further, I'd still use the same sort of practice technique of thinking, well, what are the shapes of this? Which to me, it's really cool. And I used to be one of those practicers who I would very diligently, spend my 2 hours, 6 days a week, and I'd hash out, which is, oh, hello, Rosemary. How are you? And it's not bad to do that, but it's not as effective as it could be. And that's where, as soon as you start to make a mental shift in your practice, when you start to really dig into picturing what you're doing, sort of especially if you can take a step back from the judgments that we sometimes do to ourselves as we're playing. Then when you take a step back and just think, well, what is the shape of this? Non-judgmental. That's a lollipop. Why? It doesn't matter. And that's so silly. Oh, why do you call it a lollipop? And again, the more I can take a non-judgmental step back and just see the shape of it, the more quickly I can learn it, which is really, it's very cool to be able to learn a piece so quickly. At first, though, I have to give the caveat. Most of the students that I do this with, there's a lot of growing pain because they're used to just the mindless sort of practice. They just, do it. But occasionally I'll have those moments with students where I had one yesterday, actually, a student that she was just learning a new piece she just got for orchestra. She's very talented as well. She's a cello player, and as we were working it, she kept struggling with this one particular little bit, the rhythm in it. And we did this sort of thing where we pictured, what does this feel like, this rhythm? And I don't remember what the way that she did this, what she said the picture of it was. But we did that little bit of work, took 2 minutes, she played it, and she got perfect. Whereas before, she would have mentally been doing it like, maybe 5-10 minutes each day, and you get a little better, little better, little better. So I just wanted to talk about more particularly this mental aspect of practicing. And one more quick thought, which is the field of what's called metacognition. It's thinking about what you're thinking about. And the more you can do this non-judgmentally, the better. Because if you are assigning judgment to how you're doing, it's really hard to think reasonably and rationally, because you've got those emotions in your brain that are inhibiting you from thinking through a problem logically. And so with that then, oh, I lost my train of thought. I'm getting old and have kids, and so dad brain there. I've lost the thought. Apparently, it wasn't that important. But the idea then being, the more you mentally work through a passage, the more it locks in. And there's a lot of work then you can do in mindfulness and metacognition. Thinking about your thinking process is what I was talking about. And with that, with metacognition, as you go through and you practice and you non-judgmentally take a step back and you play through a passage and you notice, oh, well, that's not the way I wanted it to. You try something new. Another video I also want to talk about what I call the problem-solving practice process. And I call it that because I think it's funny. It sounds funny to say that. But in this problem-solving process, in your practicing, then you take a step back and you say, okay, this right here, what is it that's my struggle? And you try something, and you try something, and you try something. And each time you try something, you say, well, what was effective about that? What was ineffective about that? And each time then you kind of mentally keep track of, well, what was I doing? Especially if it was very effective, what was I doing that made that easier? And then you sort of create this toolbox of practice tools that then you say, well, in this case, when I did this particular passage, my little string crossing thing, it was thinking about whatever it is. And then in a similar circumstance, you find a same passage, sort of, maybe similar string crossing movements, etc. That then you take that little passage and you're like, well, what was that I did before? Oh yeah, I practiced it, and then you pull that tool out of your toolbox, and so that you can come back to a more effective way of practicing. And so I'd say, the biggest thing that I'd say in thinking about, in creating a good mental structure for how you're practicing, is to continually evaluate, not judgmentally, taking a step back, not saying, oh, you dummy, why can't you get that? Or even more disadvantageous sometimes, saying, oh, I'm so cool and I got that great, because sometimes any of those judgment calls can get in our way of thinking through a process reasonably and rationally. I was going to take like 5 minutes. This was great to work through and talk through some of this. And if you have any more thoughts about ways of practicing that you'd like to talk about, any troubles with passages that you've had, just comment on this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Actually, one other quick note, which is, it's great to not have judgment. Yeah, Rosemary, it's hard for us sometimes as musicians to do, but and so I've had to spend many years, probably about a decade, practicing not being judgmental. So it's been hard. Over the next little bit, I'm actually going to be doing some little shorts that are they're designed for my rental office, and I want to talk about how do you diagnose instrument problems, and what do you look for when there might be an issue with an instrument. And so if you are interested, I'm going to try and make them only about 1 minute, make it easy for the office, so that they just have a quick short video that's only like 30 seconds or something that says, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And then, they can get the instruments in better condition. You can see one I'm working on right there that needed some attention. If this was interesting to you, make sure like the video, leave a comment about other practice tips, practice ideas, and other things that you'd like to see me do on my channel, and I will see you guys on the next one.